Now, as promised, let's get more on our top story, the continued protests across the United States sparked by the death more than a week ago of George Floyd, an African-American man who died after a white police officer pressed his knee onto his neck. Well, let's speak now to the US House Representative Hank Johnson, a Democrat who represents an eastern district of Atlanta, Georgia. The representative is also Secretary of the Congressional Black Caucus. Hank Johnson, welcome here to the programme. How alarmed are you by what you're seeing across the United States?
Well, I'm alarmed at the lack of leadership at the top and also the kind of leadership that's being exhibited by our president, which is to try to divide and conquer the people. And it's really doing no good to quell the unrest that is playing out on the streets of cities and towns across America. This issue is far greater than just simply lawbreakers looting and setting fires. It is an indication of a deeper sickness or illness that affects this society, American society, insofar as it treats its black citizens.
I'll come back to that thought in a moment or two, but the president's call for mayors and governors to get tougher, to dominate, using his words. How worried are you with those threats to send in the military?
Well, it's very worrisome. I know that this president has no respect for the rule of law, and he has no understanding or grasp of basic constitutional principles in this country. And our country is not one that allows for the military to be used for domestic purposes. The military is to defend the country from external enemies. And so anytime you have a president that threatens to usurp domestic authority and insert the military to replace law enforcement, and you know that this president has a history of disregarding basic law.
Yeah.
It's very worrisome.
What about the police tactics you've seen? Of course, rioting and looting has to be stopped, but we've all seen video of journalists being attacked, the National Guard talking about lighting up residential streets in Minneapolis, a young man with his hands up, his mask pulled down by the police and pepper sprayed, even an elderly man with a walking stick being deliberately bundled over. All of those images on our screen at the moment as I talk to you. How uncomfortable are you by all of what you've seen?
Well, this is the climate within which black people have had to live in America for our entire history. And the killing of George Floyd, where we saw a police officer keep his knee on the neck of Mr. Floyd for more than 8 minutes until he stopped breathing and actually killed him, that is the cause for the explosion of unrest in our society. That is something that black people are tired of. And it's also something that now you have white people, particularly younger white people, are very much a part of the demonstrating, the peaceful demonstrating, and they're also expressing their angst, their anger, their anguish by setting fires and looting along with the other people. And so all of that can be talked about as being lawless behavior. But
yeah,
when you really look deeper at it, it's something that is caused by the policies under which we've been living for forever.
Just briefly on this point, because the Congressional Black Caucus is holding an event later today, and it's titled Living Whilst Black in America. Now, Joe Biden, we heard earlier in the day, saying the moment has come in the United States where we have to deal with systemic racism. Is it clear to you how you actually deal with it, what the steps, the most urgent steps actually are?
Well, the law cannot change the hearts and minds of people, but the law can result in accountability for people's actions. And so law enforcement officers have to be in a position to be held accountable for their actions. And so it's time for changes in the law that allow for these police officers to be punished And for that to not happen just on occasion, but for it to happen just as often as police brutality takes place. And secondly, there are a host of social ills that society can correct by means of policy and legislation. And so when Joe Biden talks about the changes that are needed from our federal government all the way down to state and local governments, we're talking about policies that will make, that will level the playing field, that will enable all people, regardless of color, to prosper and excel in our society and live safely.
A final thought then, and coming back to President Trump, like I said I would, there are two distinct camps. One is that he is right to focus on law and order. The other is that there is a fear that he's using this as a classic dividing line, just as he has in the past, and to distract from coronavirus, all as a backdrop to his 2020 re-election. Where do you stand in terms of which camp?
Well, President Trump knows that his electoral prospects of winning re-election are declining every day, and so he's getting very desperate. He's trying to draw out voters who approve of his divisive tactics. He's trying to appeal to those who want the old America to come back, where blacks had a foot on their necks, women were in their place, there were no Latinos, and Asians were unheard of, and it was all about the white male. He's trying to bring that back, and he's appealing to his base, but America has changed. And so he's desperate, and these are the acts of a desperate man trying to win re-election.
One sentence, if you would. Does that all scare you, what you've just outlined?
Well, I am deeply concerned about the immediate future of the country, but our country has overcome a lot of obstacles in the past, and we'll get over this.
Hank Johnson, we have to leave it there, but thanks so much for joining us here on BBC News. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.